What's up, fam? Welcome back to the I Am More Than podcast. I have to start this episode off by saying you guys are the freaking best. I released a solo episode a couple weeks ago talking about something very difficult that I've been facing in my personal life and talked all about my miscarriage, going through surgery, the healing journey. And I was so anxious and nervous to talk about it at all and release that to millions of you listening, and was so scared of how it was going to be received. And you guys have met me with nothing but love and support and grace. And I can't tell you how much that has meant to me. It was such an empowering and healing thing that I didn't realize how badly I needed it until I released that episode. So I just have to say thank you so much. I never thought nor ever wanted to release another episode talking about it. But this episode is strictly meant to be a resource for any of you listening that are going through a miscarriage or will go through a miscarriage someday, because I have learned so much over this journey and gotten some knowledge and information that I really wish I had weeks ago, because it would have saved me a lot of heartache, a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration. And I'm a big believer that all of our pain can be used for a purpose. And I'm choosing to use this painful chapter as a way to pass on some knowledge and information and insight to those of you who will be navigating a very scary, very dark chapter, because there's no manual when you're going through something like this. Miscarriage is still such a taboo topic, and it's such a personal and such an isolating thing to go through. And unless you've been through it, you don't know what to expect. You don't know what's normal, what's not normal. And it can just feel very overwhelming. And that's exactly how I've felt for the past 10 weeks. And I've gone through a lot of unnecessary health damage because I didn't have knowledge and information prior. So like I said, the purpose of this episode is not so much to talk about my personal story, but to be able to share with you guys some of the things that I've learned, so that if you're navigating through this, you know questions to ask your doctor, you know things to be on the lookout for, you know relatively what is quote unquote normal and what's not normal. So if you haven't listened to the previous podcast episode that I released, it's called More Than a Miscarriage. And I talked on there how I had a silent miscarriage at 7.5 weeks. And when you have a silent miscarriage, you don't have any of the symptoms. And I went from hearing a heartbeat at 6 weeks and then going in 10 days later and no longer hearing a heartbeat. And I was given the decision between either you do a procedure called the DNC, or you take this pill that forces your body to miscarry naturally, but sometimes not everything is done properly, so you end up having to do the procedure anyways. And I was told that a DNC is quote unquote less traumatic, and at least you know it's getting done and dealt with properly, and you're supposed to be able to move forward with your life. The doctor that had done my DNC told me that within 2 to 4 weeks, I should start feeling more like myself. My hormone levels should start regulating again. And between 4 to 6 weeks, I should start ovulating. I should have a period. I should be able to move forward. So that is the impression that I was under when you last heard that podcast episode. That was still my understanding. And my experience after the DNC has been horribly traumatic and painful and scary and isolating. And I'm coming to now learn that it didn't need to be like that. So I'm hoping that by talking about this, I can prevent any of you listening that, God forbid, will go through this in the future. I'm praying that this prevents you from going through that same confusion, dealing with that same pain, and equips you with some of the questions that you should be asking your doctor. So when you have a DNC, from my understanding, your HCG levels are supposed to drop dramatically within 2 weeks. That HCG is what's in your blood. It's the hormone, the pregnancy hormone that is telling your body that you're pregnant. And from my understanding, when you have a miscarriage, that drops drastically. And I was told that I should expect that after about 2 weeks, that should go below the number 5. And then once that happens, your body can start ovulating, you can start having a period, and you start moving forward with your life. So I had my DNC on December 6th, and I was told that the procedure was successful, everything went great, and I should start healing normally. For about 24 hours, you're going to be super crampy and lethargic, but then you should be back to work. You should be back to feeling like yourself and be on your merry way. That is so far from what my experience was. Exactly a week after I had my procedure, I woke up in the middle of the night to the most excruciating pain I've ever had in my life and was passing a lot and bleeding very heavily. And I had been bleeding throughout the first week. And I was told you can spot just like a very light period after you have that procedure. This was far more than spotting. And when I was calling the doctor to tell him that, they were like, well, if you don't bleed fully through 2 pads in an hour, it's nothing to worry about. And excuse me ahead of time, I'm going to be fairly graphic in this podcast because, like I said, the purpose of this is to save you from experiencing any of this. So it's important that you know what's normal and what's not normal. And I am learning that my experience has very much not been normal. So I was bleeding pretty consistently, but then very heavily a week later. When I called the doctor, she said that maybe I had just passed some of the tissue naturally a week later. Shouldn't be a problem. They're going to test my blood for the HCG levels 2 weeks after. So the same thing happens 2 weeks later. I pass a whole bunch of stuff. I'm bleeding. I'm in a lot of pain. They have me come in for blood work, and we see that my HCG level is still shockingly high. And if you listen to the previous podcast episode, you can hear that pain in my voice about not understanding that it takes so long for your HCG to drop. And that means that your body still very much feels like it's pregnant. Like I still very much was having symptoms. The hormones are out of control. And I felt like I could handle those hormone swings and that craziness when I knew it was a purpose and like I was growing a baby. But when that's no longer happening and you're having these horrible hormone shifts and your skin's breaking out, you feel like crap and you're so bloated, then it's just a very frustrating process. And my doctor had just said, like, some people's bodies just hold on to this and it drops a lot slower. We're just going to continue testing you every 2 weeks. I now know, looking back, that I wish I asked for an ultrasound 2 weeks after the procedure when my HCG levels were still so high, because if I were to have gotten an ultrasound then, they would have seen that the procedure was not successful and that they needed to go back in and remove the remaining tissue so that my body could start healing. But my doctor never presented that option to me, and I didn't know any better. And quite frankly, it wasn't my job to know any better. It's very natural for you to be trusting of a professional in this space, but I've learned through this journey that you have to be your biggest advocate, especially when it comes to your healthcare, because you know your body better than anyone else. And the most frustrating part for me throughout the last 10 weeks is that my body was telling me something is not right. And I was trying to advocate for myself, but I feel like when you go through a miscarriage, you lose a lot of trust in your body. And so I was ignoring a lot of my intuition. And I felt like when I did speak up and when I was asking questions, I was being very gaslit into thinking that like nothing's wrong, it's in your head, essentially. So I spent literally 10 weeks feeling like I'm going crazy. Like something is not right. I know that something is not right. I don't feel like myself. I'm not getting any better. I'm still having crazy symptoms. And as much as I was trying to push that away and just move forward and focus on improving my mental health and working on exciting things with work, and I've been doing all of that and trying really hard to move forward and put one foot in front of the other. But you can't do that when your body is still holding on to things that it should have gotten rid of. So, to save you a lot of other details, I continued bleeding and having a lot of cramping and a lot of pain all throughout those 10 weeks. Every 2 weeks, I was going back for more blood tests, and my HCG levels were coming back very high every single time. They were dropping, but not nearly to the point that they should have been dropping. And again, when I decided to do the surgery, it was my understanding that within those 2 to 4 weeks is when those levels go below 5 and when your body can ovulate and you can have a period and your body starts doing what it's built to do. And knowing that my levels were still so high, it was just this constant red flag, like, hey, something doesn't seem right. And I kept calling and asking, is this normal? Do you know other people that have had this experience? Like, something just doesn't feel right. And now looking back, I should have found another doctor immediately. I should have gotten a second opinion, but you don't know how you're going to respond until you're in a situation like this. And it felt so daunting to me to find a new doctor. And the idea of going in and talking about my miscarriage and getting the medical information sent over and having blood tests, and I felt like I was starting the process over again. And that was just so daunting and overwhelming to me that I was just like, I'd rather just finish it with the one that did the procedure to begin with. And once my levels are down to 0, then I will go find a new doctor and I will try and move forward with family planning and healing with somebody else. In hindsight, I wish that I would have found somebody else a lot sooner and gotten a second opinion, because I don't believe that the original doctor that I was with did anything on purpose, but I do think that she disregarded a lot of my symptoms and didn't have my best interest in mind. So, looking back, again, I know I'm probably jumping all over the place a little bit, but looking back, I wish I would have asked 2 weeks after the procedure that if my HCG levels were still high for an ultrasound. That's the only way that they can actually get a good look in your uterus and make sure that there's nothing left over. I was not given an ultrasound until 10 weeks after my first DNC because my body literally forced me to. I had another follow-up blood test last week and the levels had come back really high, but I woke up one day in excruciating pain, still bleeding, passing a lot of stuff, and my body literally just felt like it was shutting down. I called the doctor again, and that's the first time that they ever said anything along the lines of, we need to get you in for an ultrasound. They used words like, we're worried about an infection, we're worried about damage done to the uterus. You need to get in and get seen as soon as you can. We don't have any appointments available, but if you want to wait, you can come in a couple days, or we advise you go to the emergency room. Like, the level of care that I was given at that place is just absolute shit. I'm not going to totally bash them to everybody, but if you are located in Austin, I'm happy to tell you privately who it was to make sure that you don't go there. But I was scared, obviously, because it's like, I feel terrible. Then you have this idea put in your head of there's damage done to my uterus. There could be an infection. I'm having these horrible symptoms. I didn't want to go to the ER and have a brand new doctor now thrown into the mix. I just didn't know where to turn. And I had a beautiful God coincidence that ended up leading me to this new doctor who I absolutely love now. By a friend of a friend, I had gotten her personal cell phone number. And as I was getting ready to go into the ER, I had just texted her and said, hey, I'm sorry, this is so unprofessional, but this is what I'm going through. I don't know what to do. And she was the one that was like, you need to be seen immediately. I will make an appointment for you. Come in. That's the first time I had a follow-up ultrasound 10 weeks after my first DNC. And that's when they saw that my first procedure was not successful and that I needed another one ASAP. And by the grace of God, I didn't have any internal bleeding and I didn't have a serious infection or long-term damage, which we found out in the procedure, which just thank God. But it was validating and extremely infuriating to feel like I had been trying to advocate so hard for myself for so long and was so disregarded and gaslit into thinking it was just in my head. And it just taught me a lesson that I've learned many times, and hopefully it actually sticks this time, that you have to listen to your gut. When you go through a miscarriage, you lose so much trust in your body. And I wasn't listening to the very clear signs that my body was giving me. And because I was disregarding my gut feeling, it a much longer healing journey than it probably needed to. And it ended up working out in the end. Obviously, I had a successful second procedure. I have plans to get a follow-up ultrasound in 2 weeks. I'll be doing a blood test. I'm with a doctor that I feel comfortable doing family planning and moving forward with, and I feel like has my best interests. Like, obviously, everything happens for a reason. But it has just been such a humbling reminder to always listen to your gut. So I'm hoping that by sharing bits and pieces of this story, that if you are going through a miscarriage, if you will go through a miscarriage, if you know somebody right now that is going through one and you're trying to figure out how the heck do you support them, I hope that me talking about it in the last episode and now giving you some tools and questions to ask here, I hope that it can ease your healing process a little bit so that you can move forward and so that it doesn't have to be so prolonged. It's such a difficult and terrible thing to go through, but it should not last months. And I've been dealing with this now since the beginning of December, and it's mid-February. And I just wish that I had some of this knowledge ahead of time. I learned very quickly after releasing the last podcast episode that so many women that are even in my circle that I know have struggled with miscarriage in silence. And it's not something that's comfortable to talk about. And I know from personal experience that even if you choose to talk about it, it's difficult to open up to the lengths of which you're struggling or the gravity of your feelings and your emotions with the people that you love and that love you, because nobody wants to see you in pain. No, but everybody wants to fix this because they don't want to see you hurting and they want to give you hope and they want to give you encouragement. But talking about it is so therapeutic and it's so necessary. So if you don't feel comfortable doing that with somebody that you love, then get yourself into therapy. That's been a huge, huge resource and something that I'm doing for myself because I know that I need to process through this with a third party and very much deal with these real emotions to stop from having so much anxiety about my future fertility and my future family. And I know that undealt with trauma doesn't go away. It just manifests itself in different and unique ways. So if you're in it, I'm so sorry. My heart is with you. It is such a heartbreaking, difficult, terrible, confusing thing to go through. And I'm speaking directly to those of you who know this pain. I'm so sorry. I don't know why it happened. There's no answers. I don't think we'll ever get any type of answers. But I do know that God doesn't make mistakes. And that for whatever reason, it's part of your story. And if you choose to take this chapter and help other people that will also go through it, you may find some purpose to that pain. Like I said earlier, this is the worst club to be a part of with the best members, and you are not alone. There are so many of us who have been there, who are currently there, and it's going to be okay. I know it doesn't always feel like it's going to be okay, but it will. And someday you will start feeling like yourself again. And this chapter won't hurt so much. I need that reminder too sometimes, because I feel like going through this second time around has brought such a different set of emotions than the first time. The first time it was just so raw and so traumatic and so confusing, and things just happen so fast. Whereas I've had so much time to now think about it and deal with the physical stuff. And obviously you can't heal emotionally or mentally until your physical body is healed. And when that takes a long time, it kind of pulls you back. And so I feel like I'm still very much processing it and still very much on this healing journey of moving forward, but have had so much of that just frustration, but also validation by fighting through this freaking battle for 10 weeks and learning what is quote unquote normal and what's not normal. And now just want to equip you with that. So I hope in some way this has been helpful for you. Share this with somebody that you know is going through it so that they can also have the reminder that they're not alone, and just know the things to be on the lookout for. It's a painful process, but it doesn't need to be so drawn out like it has been for me. And I'm sure that there's plenty of you listening that have also had experiences like this. So just remember to listen to your gut, find a doctor that you trust, that you love. I now know that there are wonderful doctors out there that genuinely care about you as a human being and not just another patient that they're seeing in a day. Find that person, especially if you've dealt with loss, because moving forward, it's scary and it's emotional and it comes with so much anxiety about trying to be excited about family planning in the future. And that can be an exciting thing when you have the right team surrounding you. So find the right team, look out for yourself, know that you're not going to start feeling like yourself and bounce back right away. But if it's taking you longer than 4 weeks, 6 weeks max, there's an issue and you got to get to the bottom of it. Don't let it drag on. I am glad my little chapter is coming to an end, but still frustrated it dragged on for as long as it did. So we are very much on the healing journey together. We are getting through it. And thankfully, we have so many exciting things to look forward to. I cannot wait to bring you guys season 5 of the I Am More Than podcast. You guys are going to freak out over the guests that are coming, and we have in-person podcast interviews coming, which just add a whole other element to it. So that will be dropping soon. I can't wait to share that with you guys. And I'm just really appreciative that you guys have been so supportive and loving and welcoming and kind to me during this phase and this chapter of my life. It's been difficult, but also encouraging in the sense that I know that I'm a part of something that's so much bigger. And that's what I always wanted for More Than, and what I wanted for this whole More Than movement. And you guys have given me that. And that's been such a gift. So thank you for supporting everything that I do. And just know that it's not always going to be this heavy. I promise. We are moving on to some lighter and some happier and some more exciting things. We got a new clothing collection coming. We got season 5 coming. You guys can sign up for the confidence course. We're going to have in-person events. We got a lot. So just bear with me. Thank you for being on this wild ride with me. And y'all will hear from me very soon.